for your benefit, giving you knowledge or physically harming you. But it's the same thing. That is a godly quality. So Allah doesn't trump our autonomy in that way. Because had He did that, from my perspective, then then we cannot truly have a fullness of being human beings. And that's our definition as human beings. Allah wants us to worship Him. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ, right? But Allah doesn't want us to force us to worship Him. He wants us to choose. But there is a catch with that. Because He has informed us about His nature. He has informed us about it. Exposed Himself to us. We are now responsible in some way. And that's a different discussion. So that's why I think evil is. Many times evil is because people are making those choices. Some things are out of our control. And maybe Allah wants us, for example, and this is true, we're a community. When it's not raining, what should Muslims do when we're having a drought? What do? We do a what? What kind of salah do we make? When it's a drought, what kind of prayer do we make? Anyone know? Huh? What? When it's drought, we make it's the skull, right? The prayer for seeking water. Why do we do that? And how do we do it? The Prophet taught us this. When you have no rain, what is one of the reasons why, according to Islam, quote unquote, that sometimes rain isn't sent on a people? Why? As an act of punishment, of sin. Our scholars have spoken about that. Not all times, but it could be a reason. Does sin need, according to us as Muslims, theologically, do you have to make tawbah for your sin? Yes, you do. So what is Salatul Istisqa? It is an act of communal penance, tawbah, to solicit something we need from God. We understood that perhaps the rain was kept back for what reason? Our sin. We don't know that. So we go as a community. We take the imam, he goes out of the town, we take our wives, our children, we take our goats and our camels, we all go out. We should go out crying. Signs of tawbah, nidama, tears in our eyes. We go out and the imam takes his cloak and he turns it inside out, so he humiliates himself in public. Where's your imam? Are you the imam? Yes. He's our imam. So imagine if he came to the masjid wearing a woman's dress as a man, right? What would you think about him now as your imam? You go, And you might not want to be your imam anymore. Why? Because in some way he has publicly humiliated himself in front of the community. So you question his authority, right? So let's say now, we do this as Muslims. We go out, the imam changes his clothes to humble himself, inside out. He doesn't wear normal clothes in a sense. He humbles himself. And then what? The community in their tawbah, oh Allah, forgive us of our sins and give us rain. Why do we do that? Because we understand that sin can be a cause why Allah withholds something. So we come back to Allah. We have to choose that. So this is something to be thinking about on evil, is that Allah wants us to make these choices for Him. And how we deal with things. And sometimes these things are put in front of us. How will you choose? And remember, from a believer, and this is a very simplistic answer. I mean, I'm not giving the best answer, but a believer also knows, this is sort of a cop-out answer. At the end of the day, it always works out for the believer. But we're taught that also. But this is a different discussion. Okay, another question. Any other questions? That's nice over here.
We need a question from the sisters.
Okay, go ahead. Any sisters? Go over there. In the forbidden zone.
Does Islam sometimes go against I don't know, like we say if you have to
Go against what?
Does Islam go against some things you want to do? Like, okay, if you have a beard and you have to go to work, they don't want you to have it, and you're like, it doesn't look kind of neat, so what do you do then? Like, how do you take care of it?
How do you just, if Islam puts you in a situation like asks you to do something, or maybe legally demands it in some way, and it's in conflict with something in life that you're out there in the real world you're dealing with? How do I deal with it? I just deal with it, man. I don't just, pack up and... I look at things. I think that how you deal with things as a Muslim, first you understand really what's obligatory for you. 5 prayers a day, fasting in Ramadan, being good to your parents, seeking halal income, seeking halal knowledge. These things are really obligations upon us, individually and collectively. Where you work at, there's no obligation you have to work here or there. Every person has a choice to make what they want to do, where they want to work at. There's no obligation. Seeking knowledge is on certain things. I mean, Islam would require us as a community to have certain types of knowledge in our community. Knowledge of medicine, knowledge of architecture, knowledge of Arabic language, knowledge of Quran recitation, because these are things that the society needs. And this, your imam and others will tell you that. This is pretty common sense. And in that way, it's pretty common sense. Religion of Islam, that is. But as for issues of like a man and a beard, well, it depends on you actually believe the evidence is there that it's an obligation. If it's an obligation, what level of an obligation is it? Would keeping a beard, for example, be the same level as making your 5 daily prayers? Of course not. Is your prayer invalid without a prayer? Of course not. You can read any book on the things that invalidate a prayer, and not having a beard is not one of them. So that's not a problem. What about a workplace situation? 2 options if you have problems. Change your workplace situation. Or if it's not an obligation, is it something that is really an obligation? If I don't have to be bound to it, then I can compromise it. You might want to say that. You can work that way. Remember, if you're under duress of physical threat of having an arm cut off or being killed, you can deny yourself being a Muslim. That's permissible. You can deny being a Muslim if you're under such a situation. That's true. Do you understand that? So your question is something like that. Is it something you have to do or not? If you have to do it, then you stick with it or you change your situation. If you don't have to do it, then you may find a legal loophole or someplace where you can negotiate not doing it. And that's how I live my life. I try to understand the religion in more details. I understand that there are things I have to do and there are degrees. And if I have choice, I see it situationally. For example, this brother here, he has a job where he works at, his personality, how he carries himself, he goes to work every day in his law firm, let's say, wearing his thobe. And no one says anything. Because of his confidence, his personality, he's able to express himself. So that gives him, he does it. But there's his co-worker here, there's Ahmed over here. He's not that confident in himself in his religion. Or he doesn't have that conviction. So he doesn't go to work naked, alhamdulillah. But he still goes to work wearing something, but not a thobe. He doesn't wear white, for example, which is a preferred color for a man. So he goes maybe in a gray suit. The gray suit is still covering his aura, so they're different. They both meet a legal minimum. They're in public, their aura is covered. He is more inclined towards distinction from the non-Muslims or wearing white, which is preferable. And you can find reasonable proofs that those are maybe a higher path in the religion. But him wearing a suit and tie is not prohibited, so it's okay. So you have to situate it with your capacity as an individual based upon your knowledge of the situation and the situation as it's legally defined for you. If you went to a workplace and they said you cannot pray here at all, then you take them to court and give a civil suit against them and win $1 million. Because that's the American way. Or you quit the job. It's break for Salah. One more last question, we'll stop. Anything else? Wow. Here, I'll go to you. Here we go.
My question would be, why or how did you convert to Islam?
Oh, boring story. Well, my question is, why are you Muslim? Why are you Muslim? My son is Muslim because he follows his dad, Taqlid. That's a question you all have to ask yourself. Why are you a Muslim? Because however you came to Islam, Allah opened your heart up towards it. Whether it was in the family you were in, He made sure your heart was exposed to it and stayed open. Whether it was me, I was exposed to it and I was shown that way. But I became Muslim when I was at Purdue in 1982. So that's not stuff. I can make that rhyme just for you. I can rap, not for a clap, or whatever. I'll figure that way home. When I was always interested in God as a non-Muslim before I was a Muslim. And when I was in high school, when most of you guys were probably playing basketball and football and going to things like that, I was at the library reading Plato and Nietzsche and John Locke and other philosophers and writing poetry. So I was weird. I was the ultimate nerd. So nerds are good, right? And so I bucked the system. I wasn't going, like everyone, to the football game. I was going the other way out the stadium. So I felt it was better. If you hang out with the salmon going upstream, they always get caught by the grizzlies. So I bet it's best to go downstream. That was my attitude. And that was then. Now I'm not so much. A little bit still with me. But when I believed in God, and then when I was raised as a nominal as a Southern Baptist Christian, and then when I went to high school, I sort of gave up my Christian beliefs and just sort of believed in God. Went to Purdue, and then when I was there, I was exposed to meeting Muslims, and I read an English translation of the Quran, and I believed it for face value for what it claimed it to be. I didn't question it. It seemed pretty authoritative. It seemed pretty aggressively confident what it was. If there's one thing about reading the Quran, is this: it's very confident in what it claims to be. You can't read the Quran without this question. It's definitely saying it's a book from God. Now, is it or is it not? I just took it with like Sayyidina Umar, reading Surah Taha, reading the Quran in 3 days. It took me 3 days to read the English translation of the Quran the first time I read it. I just read through it. Bam, 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 bam. I'll read like that. I couldn't but accept that it was of some origin. It came to me that way. And that was it. It wasn't until later I was given the hard questions like, how do you know the Quran's revelation? Or how do you know Muhammad was a real prophet? What about Jesus being God? He claimed to be God, etc. Hasha, astaghfirullah. And then I was confronted. I was at Purdue University, and it's in West Lafayette, Indiana. Indiana is a Bible Belt state. Purdue has a very strong evangelical Christian community. So I was confronted. I was in the MSA there. The MSA there was not the same as MSAs now. They were quite different. Now they're a little more open. Then they were like really closed and all that stuff. And Muslims were very aggressive, and we're the right religion, and we're going to show those Christians how bad they are and wrong they are, and da da da. And now, it's been turned around that, unfortunately. The table's been turned on this. But Muslims at the time were very aggressive. So I was involved in some aggressive dawah program, going out there meeting Christians and trying to disprove Jesus was God and showing them the Bible had fallacies in it. And so it made me question a lot of stuff I believed, and I had to rethink it. But that's really it. I believe because I really have a hard time explaining Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I have a hard time to explain who Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. Was he a prophet of God or not? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. I think there's a lot of evidence that he was what he claimed to be, and I follow it. And I trust him in that, and then my faith then grows from that. Maybe some other time we'll have that discussion. Why do you think Muhammad is a prophet or something? That needs to be something we talk about in our community. Actually, I need to say something to the community here. First of all, I want to thank you all, honestly, that you had the gumption to do this type of talk. Because most of our mosques in Houston are not doing this. And they must be doing this. Because any question here that's being asked today is being asked in every mosque in every place in the city. But answers are not always forthcoming. Second of all, I don't think I did a very good job. This is the first time. I'm going to work on it. I'll get some feedback from my students and from any of you. I'll take your criticism. I will tweak this out to be a streamlined discussion, maybe make it easier, focus on certain things, inshallah. That's my intention. But I think that we need, and I really believe this now, I came to this conviction 2 days ago, and it's something was formulating in my head. I believe our community needs a set of community classes. The first class we need is there a God or not? How can we be confident in that? The second class we need, who was Muhammad? How can we convey to our community and to non-Muslims that he truly was a prophet of God as a historical human being. What does that mean? The second question we need to be bringing into our community is, what is the ijaz of the Quran? What is the quote-unquote miraculous nature of the Quran in our time? And I'm not talking about scientific miracles. I mean, how does the ijaz, the inimitability of the Quran, become relevant for us, particularly for non-Arabs? Because the first community were Arabic-speaking people, and that was how the Quran addressed them, as an Arabic-speaking community. How does that living miracle of the Quran, quote-unquote, be relevant for us today? And I'm not just speaking about scientific issues and things like that. We need to have that discussion. We need to empower ourselves. And then there's the fourth discussion we have to have in our community. What is the Sharia? What is sacred law? What is the sacred law as embodying the Quran and the Sunnah relevant for us as a community that has normal human relations, in our community or not? These are four things we have to be talking about, and we need to be educating ourselves on in a very structured approach. So I'm just throwing it out there to think about, because I think it's really relevant. I think today's talk for me was the reason I took this talk wasn't because I feel I could be a good speaker. Is because it challenged me. You were challenging me to formulate finally a lot of stuff I was thinking about for the past few years. And how I need to really formulate a good response towards that. So I want to work on that. But it led me also to these other questions that are also percolating in my mind that we need to address. Look at it. I've never been to the Nigerian community. This is the second time I've been into a Nigerian community event. I don't know what goes on in your community, unfortunately. But what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling,